Happy Monday, everybody. We are talking about a victory Monday today, and the Bengals are officially on a win streak. 2 games in a row that the Bengals have pulled off. 2 wins, 2 ugly ones, but needed ones. We'll talk about kind of, that old age-old discussion of quality of the victories, if that even plays a part in this or not. I'm Anthony Cosenza, and the displaced John Sheeran, who has been exiled to his car today, because those of you in the greater Cincinnati area probably know that there's some sort of power outage. So John has been thoughtful enough to still join us to talk about the Bengals win over the Browns, despite having no power. So he's in his car on his phone. What's going on, John?
We're hanging in there. I think people are going to notice there's going to be a lot of sweat on my brow, but like about 20, 30 minutes in. It's not exactly cold in this car, but we will power through. And they say audio is king. I hope my audio is good enough for everyone out there, but yeah, this is what we have to work with right now.
Well, keep an eye out for Brucey. He says he's in the car behind you. I don't know if that is it. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not. And then of course Dan always looks out for others. He's wondering what Randall is doing with the in the dark there. Okay,
he's in the dark, all right. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Brucey's kidding. He's not in the car behind you. So we're gonna talk about the win. The Bengals win 21-14. There are some things to like, some things not to like, and then the bottom line is they get the W. They keep kind of crawling back towards the 500 mark. They've got an interesting couple of games coming up next. Eagles and Raiders. They've got both. I believe both of those are at home. So those are you kind of hope that they have the let's see. All wins are on the road, right? For the Bengals. Yeah. So, I mean, they have yet to win at home this year. So they got to start winning some of those home games. Regardless, brain's a little fried today. I apologize. But regardless, let's talk about it. And the thing is, before we kind of dive into the, what we saw on film, what we saw during the game, all that kind of stuff, I want to just update on the injury stuff. That was a little bit of a bloodbath yesterday for both teams. As probably everybody knows now, Deshaun Watson, you saw it on the replay. I mean, you saw the thing pop on the replay, which was pretty gruesome. Despite, what you may think about Deshaun Watson, the person, you don't want to wish injury on somebody, especially one kind of severe like that. So, at any rate, he has torn his Achilles, done for the year. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a guy we actually profiled here a little while back on the show, came in, made some fun plays, made some pretty big mistakes, and then we saw Jameis Winston at the end there. So on the Browns side of things, at least, their starting quarterback is now done for the year. For the Bengals, John, a little bit better and a little bit worse than originally feared for Orlando Brown Jr. and Geno Stone. Hopefully you're still with me because I've got a black screen here. So there we go. A little bit better than initially thought for both of them. It sounds like, according to Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, initially said it was a calf injury for Orlando Brown, but now it's more of like the sprained knee, behind the knee type of thing.
So I think for both Orlando Brown Jr. and Geno Stone, there were thought to be injuries that actually ended up being different than what they are. I think with Orlando Brown, it is a calf injury. It's described as like a calf strain, and Zach Taylor told the media today that he's considered day-to-day and he's officially like questionable for this week. And he went into the locker room against the Browns. He came back out of the locker room after halftime. It was just with his teammates on the sideline, and that could have been a situation where if he had to go back in the game, maybe he would have. But Cody Ford was able to last out there at left tackle against Myles Garrett and company. Was able to finish the game. So Orlando Brown Jr. wasn't needed to come back into the game based off of how it went, but I think they're going to try to play it, pretty safe with him and just see how he feels, throughout the week and maybe get some practice in here and there. With Geno Stone, that was a lot. It seemed like a lot more serious because he collided with Von Bell right next to the end zone there on that last drive of the day, and it looked like both players were kind of injured, but Von Bell was able to kind of get back up. But Geno Stone was on the ground for several minutes, ended up bringing the air cast and the cart out for him.
Yeah,
described as like a tibia injury initially, and then it ended up being just like, no, he's got a really short he's got a really sore shin, and he's going to be really sore for the remainder of this week. So based off of what Zach Taylor told everyone on Monday, it's more likely that Geno Stone plays than Orlando Brown this week, or Geno Stone has a better chance of playing than Orlando Brown, but it's certainly not out of the question that Orlando Brown can come back. It's just a matter of if he practices or not. And I think Geno Stone is in a position where he's got a contusion and he can kind of, push through the pain if that's necessary.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the old bone bruise thing or whatever, but they treated it like it was a broken bone. I mean, obviously when you see the air cast and everything, it's like, so, those are not like, the Bengals got, 7 guys injured in this game necessarily, but 2 kind of scary ones and 2 starters that you feel like, man, that's those are important players. Cody Ford came in. It was with a little bit of mixed results there in relief of Orlando Brown. And I know you, John, said, in a tweet you put out that there is we saw some snaps from Matt Lee and jumbo packages and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting. But overall, it seems on the injury front, the Bengals dodged some kind of long-term bullets there, but there definitely is some issues that, the week to week they'll have to monitor. Just the Stone one was very scary. And the shame of that one was, it's late in the game, garbage time. He had just had a nice interception and return. So, the shame of that is just like, oh man, that's not a way you want to end the game there. But, thankfully it's not what we initially feared.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool because I think after the game he got a game ball and he was like, still with the guys, standing on his own power, and he got that moment to kind of celebrate and everything like that. So yeah, complete 180 from what we thought was the case when he got carted off the field, and just at the time where you thought that he was kind of finding himself in this defense, as the entire defense really has stepped up and looked a lot like what we expected them to look like in the past couple of weeks. And it really is a marvel that Orlando Brown Jr., for being 6'8", 340 pounds, he's been arguably one of the most durable offensive linemen in the game since he entered the league in 2018. And a guy at that size, typically, those guys and their physical profiles end up breaking down, and they suffer, nagging injuries here and there. But it's never really been that kind of a long-term injury that Orlando Brown has had to kind of overcome and gone through a recovery process. And it seems like he was able to kind of dodge another one in this case. That's a testament to how he takes care of his body. It's a testament to how he goes through, every single year, offseason to offseason. And, I think the Bengals have a lot of trust in that. But, this was a situation, Anthony, where you bring in Trent Brown in the offseason as like that ideal veteran swing tackle. You draft Marius Mims, and you can either start one of those 2 guys depending on if Mims is ready. And this would have been the exact situation where you would love to have Trent Brown come back in off the bench and just fill in for at left tackle, because he was able to play both sides, and he had Marius Mims practicing on both sides when Trent Brown was the starter in the first few weeks. So now that Trent Brown's after the season, this would have been the ideal situation where you would have loved to have all 3 of those guys healthy. And right now, only one of them is like 100% healthy, and that's why you're stuck with not stuck with, but you're left with Cody Ford there at left tackle. And it did seem like that if Orlando Brown Jr. were to miss this game, that Cody Ford would stay at left tackle. Zach Taylor doesn't want to move Marius Mims out for right tackle, and I don't really blame him because of how well he's played there.
Yeah. So the Bengals win 21-14. Was it was 21-6 until basically under 2 minutes to play there. So they had it kind of well in hand, but that wasn't so much the case. I guess in a way, and we'll talk about this in a little bit in further detail in a minute, but I guess in a way, we've been kind of clamoring for the, complimentary football, everybody do their job, every unit do their job type of things. And in some ways we saw that this week, where obviously Charlie Jones started the game off with a big play, the 100-yard kickoff return there. And then we had the Bengals defense stepping up, be it against 3 different quarterbacks. They led up the touchdown to Winston afterward. or later in the game rather. But I mean, you had the group kind of, you know, doing each of its respective jobs, but you had an Evan McPherson miss from a long field goal as well. You had the offense really in a dry spell to begin the game. So that, you know, is definitely a bummer. And they started clicking, you know, towards in the third quarter and whatnot. You know, overall there, you know, it felt like there were good things from each of the three phases, but there were still hiccups. You know, again, the McPherson miss on the field goal. It's a long one, but he's made those. I mean, it's there. The offense, a little bit of dry spell early, picked it up late. And then, of course, the defense really, you know, was the one carrying the team once again this week, creating turnovers, a lot of pressures, a lot of sacks, despite who the quarterback was.
Yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity for that defensive line. Again, 8 guys deep, playing at least 20 snaps, like on the low end of that rotation. And they got after Watson and DTR throughout the game. And it was weird seeing like the old version of Deshaun Watson kind of, you know, extending plays and making plays out of structure a little bit. And that kind of gave the Bengals a little bit of fits here and there. But, you know, the new version or the current version of Watson kind of came out too, who kind of crumbles under pressure. And that's how you're able to get both Trey Hendrickson and Sheldon Rankins those much needed sacks in the first half. And just all throughout the game, I think Sam Hubbard played really well because, again, his snaps have kind of seen a downtick in recent weeks with Miles Murphy and Joseph Asai. Joseph Asai, especially, I think, played pretty well in this game. The stats didn't necessarily back that up, but he got a really big hit on Watson. He was able to just provide, you know, ancillary pressure when you had Sam Hubbard off the field and maybe Miles Murphy on the other side of him. So you have a really quality rotation along the defensive line right now, and that's where you were able to make some of those plays. But yeah, man, like the offense is just, it's going through a funk, and I don't think that you can like sugarcoat that. And I know that, you know, Joe Burrow said after the game that he's not really concerned about winning ugly so long as you actually win. And it's better to win when you're only scoring, you know, 2 offensive touchdowns in the game rather than you're scoring 30 and you still lose. But that, to me, that's just kind of a cop-out because regardless of how talented the Browns defense was and, you know, how talented the Giants defense was, it's hard to win when you only score 2 touchdowns on offense. And you can't rely on, obviously, a special teams touchdown every single week to kind of save your bacon a little bit. And that ended up being the difference in this game. But when you go 0 for 6 on third down in the entire first half, that's not just the defense just playing better than you. That's just you just continuing to make the same mistakes and not being able to get in the rhythm, whether the ball's not coming out in time, whether the receivers aren't getting open. There are some major issues with this offense right now that you can't just rely on just a second half renaissance every single week because you're going to face offenses that are better than the Giants and the Browns, and they're going to punish you for it.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll transition in just a minute. I mean, there's this defense gives the Bengals fits on offense. There's no doubt about it. It gives Joe Burrow fits. I mean, Joe Burrow played turnoverless football, and you know, there's levels where you go, well, there is efficiency shown there, but there's also, you know, I mean, the pass attempts were low because they weren't really sustaining drives at one point in the game, and then also the first drive just it was non-existent because they had an opening touchdown. So, I mean, that would cut off, you know, potentially 5 to 7 pass attempts, something like that, if they were able to move the ball in that opening drive a little bit. So, I mean, that takes into account on some things, but issues running the football. I know there was a big run from Chase Brown that was negated on pretty weak call. Officiating again was a little suspect this week in a number of different regards. So the run game is having problems, but Chase and Higgins just continue to make plays, continue to show that they are great after the catch. They're great adjusters to the football when it's in the air, and they really know how to box out other defenders. But credit the Browns defense. I mean, despite giving up a touchdown to each of those guys, touchdown pass to each of those guys, I mean, they were clamping down on some things throughout the day. I mean, yeah, I think there were 4 tight ends targeted in the day, and it netted one catch for 2 yards total. So, right. I mean, there's some things that definitely need to change in this offense.
Yeah, and I think the Browns playing tightly contested man coverage on the boundary, like that was a clear expectation because that's always been the case. Like Denzel Ward and Jamar Chase have had phenomenal battles over the years. Martin Emerson is proven to continue to be a great matchup against T. Higgins. But in this game, like you finally had both those guys step up and make more plays than they usually had against this team on the boundary. I think what I would have wanted to see, I would have expected Jamar Chase to be more in the slot in this game just to get him away from those matchups. And because now you've had the versatility and the ability to move him inside more often because you're not, you know, constricted with Tyler Boyd kind of taking those snaps there. But I didn't really see that much in this game. I thought there was a lot more left to be desired about how they were to attack this Browns secondary. And I think even still, like, they had more opportunities than Burrow ended up giving them like a chance for, because whether he just didn't see those coverage breaks, down into the field, or he just wasn't looking on the other side, or whatever the case may have been, there were plenty of times in this game where I think the offensive line protected long enough, but he kind of held onto the ball and just wasn't aggressive enough in some of those situations. And that's where the pressures and some of those sacks ended up kind of coming from. So yeah, whatever the case may be, like, I think very similar issues to last week, where you were also really constipated against the Giants defensive front that is typical of creating chaos and disruption. And yes, you're able to find some success later in the game when you're able to find some rhythm, but right now, like, the passing offense, it doesn't seem to be completely on the same page. And I think part of that is also because you're not really playing a lot of balanced football on offense either, because you're really not getting anything out of Zach Moss at this point as a running back. He had 70 yards from 6 carries. You're kind of coming out of the backfield there, but it's night and day difference when Chase Brown carries the ball compared to Zach Moss. At least with Chase Brown, you can expect some extra yardage after contact and expect some yardage above expectation. Whereas with Zach Moss, what you see is what you get. So I don't know what the plan is with that. I don't know if they just really just gave it like 80-20 or 75-25 to Chase Brown at this point, but you need some type of, competency at the run game. Maybe that can, jumpstart the pass game a little bit. But yeah, like, I think a lot of those same issues from last week against the Giants, against another talented defense that has historically given them fits, they kind of all came to head on Sunday.
Well, look, I mean, the Bengals, we talked about this last week. The Bengals falling to 0-5 in the conference and 0-2 in the division, potentially, if they drop this one, would have been, a nail in the coffin type of thing for them. So it just, you just kind of had to have this one. They get increasingly important as the weeks go on, obviously, but this was one that you had to have, and you hadn't had a win there in Cleveland since 2017. So you just had to have it. But this kind of begs the question here. What is this? Really, the last 2 wins, right? Are these fool's gold type of wins to just kind of, you take a win anytime you can get in the NFL, obviously. And I know we're speaking with Sam Hubbard tomorrow. We're set to, so I'm sure he will tell us the same. But the fact of the matter is, in 2 weeks, they played 4 different quarterbacks in their 2 wins. And it's Daniel Jones, a struggling Deshaun Watson, and then 2 backup quarterbacks for the Browns. So I guess the question, I don't want to be Mr. Pessimist or anything like that, because, again, they've done what they've needed to do. And they did so in the fashion that we were clamoring for early in the season, which is fix the defense, right? Fix the defense. And they have done that the last couple of weeks. Hell, man, Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt had more tackles than Nick Chubb had rushing yards. They had 23 combined tackles, and Nick Chubb had 22 rushing yards. So, that's the formula for success, and that's what you want to see. But I don't know, man. Like you said, they're still like the narrative is still they got to get this thing going. We're in week, we're in the middle of the season here. We got to get this thing shaping up better.
Yeah, I thought about this last week, and I think it still remains the same this time. Like, this is the type of win that you would typically like to see in September, when you're just figuring things out and you're in, what is now the new preseason of the NFL. But you're in the middle of October now. Like, you're thinking about, playoff seeding and everything. Like, it's starting to come into the picture, and like at this point, teams are starting to find their identities. They're starting to figure out what's their strengths and weaknesses. And, it's pretty obvious what the Bengals' strength is whenever Joe Burrow can get the ball out to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that's how the offense moves. And on defense, their strength is having that 8-man deep pass rush that can kind of go in and out of the game and have, players complement Trey Hendrickson. When those 2 things aren't working, it's hard for the Bengals to fall back on anything else. It's hard for them to fall back on an ancillary, receiving option, because it's right now it's not necessarily Yoshavas. It's not necessarily Mike Gesicki. It's not Eric All yet. So there's not a lot else to lean on in terms of the passing game, aside from your top 2 targets. And on defense, I think it is kind of a little bit of fool's gold. Like, admittedly, Daniel Jones has not thrown a touchdown pass at home since New Year's Day of 2023, if you can believe that. So, the measuring stick of doing well in defense against the Giants offense, without Malik Neighbors, mind you, it is what it is. And the Browns offense was completely abysmal entering this game. And mind you, Deshaun Watson completed like 80-something% of his passes. So it's not like they were completely shutting him out before he exited the game. And when he did exit the game, I think a lot of people were a little bit worried about, oh, like maybe DTR is going to be better than him. And DTR ended up being completely worse because he was, a backup thrusted into the game against the defense that was, playing with confidence. But Deshaun Watson arguably was playing like the best quarterback on the field in the first half. Like that's just what it was. And then he got hurt, and then the whole dynamic of the game changed. So yeah, I think there's progress that the defense has made, but like there are much better offenses that they have to face, and we already seen them against really competent offenses this time. So how this defense looks with a full pass rush against a competent quarterback and a competent passing scheme, that'll be a real test to see in the coming weeks.
Well, it feels like there's a lot of, well, there's this and then there's that. Like, like you just talked about. Well, Deshaun Watson was playing pretty well in almost two quarters of play, but still the Bengals had them shut out, right? To the point when he exited the game. So you go, okay, and then it took everything, 4th and goal from the 1 for them to get that ball into the end zone there from the Browns. So, there's you got the 100-yard kickoff return, which is amazing. You never really get to see that. And then you have the miss from Evan McPherson, right? And then you have the great plays by Higgins and Chase, some great throws by Burrow late, but the absolute dry spell in the first half. So there's a lot of this and that. And that I think that's where people are going, who is this team? What are they? What are they about? And, are they really good, and are they going to be set to hit the pedal to the metal, or are they, is this just a team that once they face the more formidable teams, it's going to start showing the wobbliness again?
It's tough because you can afford to kind of fall back on past precedents here, I guess, because at 1-4, they were pretty much dead in the water. And for most teams, that would be, like everyone's trying to, sell high and just, kind of look towards next year. But of course, this team has always kind of hit those lulls in the first, 5-6 weeks of the season, and they managed to turn around. Now they're 3-4. They won 2 straight, and they have I think negative odds, or I think they have greater than 50% chance odds of making the playoffs according to some sports books. So this is pretty much the exact same situation that they found themselves in the past couple of years. So yeah, you can kind of lean on to the fact that this is just who they are, and they're just going through their consistent motions, in early October, and then this is when they start to kind of find themselves a little bit. But at some point, you do need to see the results kind of stick into place here, and you need to fall back on, okay, what works and what doesn't, and if the things that aren't working right now aren't so easily fixable, and that's a cause for concern, because I think in years past, when they were having offensive issues, early on in the season, you saw the run game find some consistency, like in 2022, when they were able to kind of adjust that scheme a little bit. I'm not really sure what the answers are with their run game right now, because I think that they were trying new things in the beginning of the season. Teams kind of caught on to that, and they've kind of just been able to, pretty much stifle it. And they need to find some counters to what they were trying to do, because I don't know if Burrow right now is capable of dropping back 50 times and having a dominant all-star performance against a really good defense. And that's not taking away anything from Burrow. I'm just saying that the formula for success this year had to be a more balanced approach, and it had to be utilizing those tight ends in the run game and trying to find some consistency and some explosion out of there. And you're not really getting that necessarily. And that's putting more pressure on the passing game to perform. And it's just not where it needs to be right now. So yes, you can fall back on, yes, they've kind of done this before, but I think there was a little bit more hope offensively in years past about them figuring things out. I'm not saying there's no hope now, but these last 2 weeks have not necessarily been promising on that front.
Yeah, and then these are the other narratives. David Markham's play calls suck from the coach, and then of course Burton. Where's he at in this whole situation? So I don't know how you feel. I mean, to me, it's a chicken or the egg thing with the play calling. A lot of people had a problem with the Bengals crawling in a shell a little bit late in that game. I mean, even though they had it pretty well in hand late, you felt like they were still kind of giving a little bit of CPR to the Browns by just not being able to run the clock out, right? And so there's that element, but is it also just, man, this is a bad matchup for us on offense, and we just can't do all of the things that we want to do. So I kind of see both sides of that coin.
It's funny because obviously against the Ravens, Zach caught a ton of flack, and rightfully so, for just running 3 straight times when you're 50-something yards away from field goal range, but you wanted to just kind of drain some clock there anyways. and of course they missed the field goal, and you took the ball out of Burrow's hands. I don't necessarily blame him in theory for, like, in this game, just, spamming run calls late in the game to make sure that the Browns don't have a ton of time left. But again, it's not a matter of running the ball. It's a matter of running the ball well. And in the first half of this game, they only ran the ball 6 times. And the best play that they had got called back for, let's be honest, a terrible holding call. So they're not finding any success running the ball, and that there needs to be adjustments in that regard. So the play calling of this game didn't, I think, irk me that much if I were to speak from that lens. Again, I think there were missed opportunities that Burrow just didn't see, and there could have been more explosive plays if he were to just let it rip. And that was a problem with him last week against the Giants, and it slowly got better as the game went on. And the same thing happened in this one, where he just kind of trusted, Chase and Higgins in those one-on-one situations as the game kind of progressed. So one play calling thing, though, enough of these sweeps. Again, like these outside runs where they're just tossing the ball to Chase Brown, they never gain yards. Like at some point, like I'm always process over results, but I don't think the process is there. I can't imagine these things do well. These plays do well in practice enough to do them in the game, because they never do well in the game, and I don't think they have the personnel up front yet to really block these guys out in space. So if you want to play calling Eric for me, toss the sweeps out of the playbook. Enough.
Okay. All right. I'm with you. I think there was one occasion yesterday late where they tried it, and they're trying to bleed clock, and then it ends up being a 4-yard loss. You're just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Do you have, between these two options here, do you have a gut feeling on what, are these fool's gold wins these last couple of weeks, or is this team starting to turn the corner in the right direction, or is it maybe a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. Again, like, these are the games that you need to win in September. You need to find ways to win early in the season when you really don't know who you are. The longer the season goes on, and the more common that these types of games happen, then it just starts to question, like, your legitimacy as a playoff team. Like, I think the whole theme of this game to me was that, like, over the past 2 weeks, yes, the Bengals are buying themselves time to make the playoffs, but once they get there, how much confidence is there that they can find a way to win against better teams, against better defenses? You don't make the playoffs out of good defense, and you're going to have to go up against the likes of, like the Chiefs again, and like other teams that have high quality defenses that are going to find ways to figure you out. And there's going to be 17 weeks of film for them to kind of study on you. So it's not going to get any easier in the playoffs. And I don't think the Bengals right now are a complete team that can complete on all 3 phases on the same week, because right now it's either the defense shows up and the offense is stuck in the mud, or vice versa. And until we see a complete game from this team, it's really hard to see that any of these wins are leading to something more promising than just barely making the playoffs.
Yeah. He is John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Cosenza. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe in Cincy podcast channel, BLEAV, and the Believe Network. You got to go find the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. Resubscribe to that feed where you can get our show, Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, as well as 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin, and Matt and Willie No Ball with the coach Matt Minnick and Willie Lutz. So go resubscribe through your favorite audio platform. Leave us a review there. If you like the video side of things, we stream live on our YouTube channel. You can get that through the show icon underneath the right-hand side of the screen there. Click that and subscribe, bell, all that good stuff will be coming up for you to do that, to get with our YouTube channel. We appreciate all the support there. And then, of course, we also stream live to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, as well as a couple of Twitter accounts as well. So we appreciate all the support there. All right, let's close up with some. We kind of started this last week. I don't know why we decided to do it. Week 6? I don't know why we decided to do that, but we're doing some weekly awards. So play of the game, I think it's pretty easy. I mean, I don't want to steal thunder here, but it's hard to go against Charlie Jones in that 100-yard kickoff return to start the game.
I mean, yeah, and I think what's beautiful about that is that after the game, Darren Simmons, I think, was talking on a radio show, and the difference between this return and others is that you didn't have, like, Jones back there with, like, Chase Brown or Trayvon Williams. It was just Charlie Jones and Drew Sample, just, as the ball was in the air, he kind of got himself in a position to be a lead blocker, and it was his block along with, I think, Akeem Davis-Gaither that kind of sprung Jones free up in there. So it was a great adjustment made by Darren Simmons, I think, based off of what he saw on film against the Browns leading up to this week. And special teams matters. And again, it was ultimately the difference in the game, because the Browns only lost by 7. But for the sake of doing something a little bit different, Jamar Chase stepping over Greg Newsome like he's Ty Lue, like he's Allen Iverson. I mean, that's an instant in Bengals lore, and I think it's going to be on posters for Bengals fans all over the place. And like that was an instant classic. So I have to give the nod to the first back shoulder throw and completion of the year for like an honorable mention.
Yeah, and it again, you mentioned back shoulder throw, that he also just did an outstanding job positioning himself to get that catch there. So that was a great play there. What about who is your defensive MVP in this one?
Defensive MVP, I'm gonna go with. It's so easy to pick Trey Hendrickson every week because again he had 2 sacks this week. I'm gonna go Sam Hubbard though, not just because he's on our show tomorrow, but again, like I think he's really rounding into like the player that he should have been at the start of the season, and he got his first career interception. He got a sack late in the game that ended up being like a fumble, and I think he got more pressure in this game than he's had in weeks past this year. So a really complete performance from the defensive line as a whole. But I'm gonna go Sam Hubbard for this one.
That's a good one. I'll go Hendrickson, but I want to also give and Hendrickson just outstanding. What do you have? 2 sacks and
yep.
I mean just animal. I do want to give a honorable mention to, like I mentioned, the 2 linebackers, though. I mean, the fact that they had combined for more tackles than Nick Chubb had rushing yards, to me was just like, wow, that's incredible. And that defense, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that they attempted to do a little bit against the Ravens, which is we're not going to have Derrick Henry beat us. We're not going to have Nick Chubb beat us. And so Chubb had the touchdown on a 4th and goal. It was, inside the 1. But, I mean, he had tough sledding. And granted, he was coming back from an injury too. So, I mean, he's kind of finding himself. But, I mean, honorable mention there. Offensive MVP is a little tougher. I'm going to let you go first on this one because I think I've gone first on the others. But offensive MVP for you.
T. Higgins deserves credit here because he's been shut out in past Browns games against the likes of Martin Emerson. Like last year in that first game of the season, I think he was like 0 for 8 in terms of targets that went his way. So he and Burr went on the same page. This time, though, 8 targets, 4 receptions, and each reception was an explosive play. And every time he caught the ball, something great happened. And obviously he got in for a touchdown there at the end of the game. So really good job by him, just kind of owning that matchup for the first time in his career, and it became a difference.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to go first because that's where I was going. Tough catch after tough catch. The touchdown was a tough guy play, right? Breaks out of the tackle and then scoots into the end zone there. He does a lot of the – I mean, Chase does stuff across the middle too, but Higgins does a lot of the dirty work, right? A lot of the dirty work across the middle, the tough catches. His catch radius is awesome. This offense is just different, even with the dry spells that occur with it. This offense is just different when Higgins is healthy and in there contributing. It's just the fact of the matter.
Very honorable mention, though. Amarius Mims only went up against Myles Garrett a handful of times, but I think he shut him out every time that he did go up against him. And he continues to not pass protect like a rookie. I think there are still some very minor mental things, whether it be in run blocking or his timing and pass protection, but it just his movements and his ability to play in space and just everything that kind of goes into his sets, like it just looks beyond his years. And this was one of the first major tests that he had just in that matchup alone, because Garrett just dominates anyone that he goes up against. But when you have that power and that length and that speed to get out into space, into your set, like it's very hard no matter who you are going up against him. So Amarius Mims, I think, showed a lot of promise for the future of this matchup.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to kind of go for unsung heroes, a little duo with him. And I mean, Cody Ford, it wasn't a perfect day from him, but you do go up against Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett wasn't a huge factor in this game, really. And so both of them kind of teamed up to take care of Myles Garrett. Cody Ford, again, not a perfect day, but I mean, I think coming in relief from a guy who was playing at a near Pro Bowl level coming into this one in Orlando Brown, coming in relief and going up against that defense. And, I mean, the run game had issues, obviously, but I mean, I think both of those guys deserve a little bit of a tip of the cap. Particularly, it's hard when you're coming off the bench, right? And spelling a starter to, come in there and still cement the win.
Yeah, and I think, when Ford went into the game initially, it's like they gave up like back-to-back sacks, and that drive was like lost. But outside of that, I don't think that any drive was really stifled because of him personally. Again, like you said, for the context of the situation and the matchup is about as good as you could have expected. And, you hope that you don't have to rely on him for too much longer in the season. And you hope that games like this kind of happen like this, where you're able to just figure it out and help him out as much as you can. But yeah, like as the game went on, I think the offense was able to kind of operate with him, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. That's well said. Operate, just game continues to operate. I like that. But those are some of our awards. We'll take if either during the rest of the live chat here, which won't be too much longer, or in the comments after the fact. If you want to leave your award winners, go ahead and do that. We encourage that. But Bengals win 21-14. It was not as close as that seemed, as the Browns got a score late, but that was the deal there. And they improved to 3-4. They have the Eagles at home and then the Raiders at home. Raiders are a bit of a mess right now. Eagles are a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of team. So we'll have to see exactly what the Bengals end up doing after those two. But then after that is the rematch in Baltimore. If the Bengals end up having a winning record there and go in there, that's, that'll be a big time game. And obviously the Ravens do play tonight, Monday night. So keep an eye on that one. There's a doubleheader. The Chargers also play it's the Chargers and the Cardinals, right? Yeah. And then it's Ravens Buccaneers. So doubleheader there. Check that out on ESPN and ABC apps. No promotion there, just kind of doing the thing. Anything else, John, before we can kind of do a mini drop mic and get on out of here?
No, man. I think as you've seen, my lighting has slowly decreased, but there are lights in my building now, so I'm very excited to go back into some AC.
There you go. All right. Well, sorry you're roasting in your car there, and tomorrow it'll probably be around 11:30 Eastern, I think, that we'll be speaking with Sam Hubbard, working that out with his reps, but there is a cool event that he is hosting in Cincinnati. So go check that out if you're able to get in there. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate it. And we will be back later this week with more from the Orange and Black Insider, and keep it to the channel to get the other shows as well. John, take care, buddy.
Peace, guys.